How do you remake Resident Evil 4, an experience that changed the way action games are made today? It is, at best, an unfair challenge, and at worst, an impossible task. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel a second time, developer Capcom has doubled down on the brilliance of the original's design, elaborated on it, and finally tuned the experience so that it reminds longtime fans like me of its brilliance, while also subverting expectations. All the while, introducing an all-new generation to a modern classic and one of the most important games of all time. If you're not familiar, the premise of Resident Evil 4 is straightforward. Leon S. Kennedy, the cool and handsome rookie cop turned government agent who you may remember from his escapades in Resident Evil 2's Raccoon City, has been sent to rural Spain to track down Ashley Graham, the US president's missing daughter. Yes, it is a save the princess trope, but even 18 years later, its juxtaposition against the survival horror genre serves as an immaculate setup for the game's over-the-top set pieces. In this case, the princess is in another castle, but it's a castle besieged by parasitic infections and mind-controlled cultists, so you'll have to blast your way from a rundown village to a military island to get her back. While the core pillars of tense, up-and-close personal action and careful resource management remain welcomingly unchanged, improvements to character development elevate the experience as a whole. Leon isn't just a cool-looking dude with swoopy hair and a tweed jacket who says sometimes cool, sometimes corny things and does super cool stuff. He's more than that. Now, he's a cool dude with cool hair doing cool stuff, but who also acts like a human being. This is a Leon who carries the trauma of the Raccoon City incident from Resident Evil 2 Remake, which gives more weight to his character and serves as compelling context for his motivation to save Ashley Graham. For him, this isn't just another assignment. It's a chance at redemption for the lives he couldn't save in Raccoon City. Those concerned this added layer of humanity has changed Leon's iconic action hero cheesiness shouldn't worry, as Leon is still an absolute one-liner cornball. In fact, this aspect of his character has been churned up a notch. Through the chaos of blood-soaked battles where he faces down crowds of parasite-infected Ganados, Leon still takes the time to toss out one-liners. And it serves as an incredible way to ease the nerve-wracking tension of a fight.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
The world of Resident Evil 4 is grimy, filth-covered, and horrific, but it's also one where a government agent trying to save the president's daughter also says not bad right to himself after suplexing a Ganado so hard its head pops like a water balloon. Facing off against the Ganado is more stress-inducing and terrifying than ever before. The frenetic movements, unexpected lurches, and vicious attacks have all been intensified, making each encounter a panic waltz of crowd management, fighting for breathing room, and hoping you've got enough ammo and health to get through it all. Seeing Dr. Salvador, the chainsaw-wielding, potato-sack-wearing maniac, stomp through the crowd to try and tear Leon apart resurfaced a fear that repeated playthroughs of Resident Evil 4 had long since dulled. These scenarios are absolutely heart-pounding, and despite the hair-raising tension, I couldn't get enough of it because the combat just feels so damn good. From blasting a wall of enemies with a shotgun to a quick parry of a stampeding pitchfork-wielding Ganado to delivering a sweeping roundhouse kick that pushes back the crowd, Resident Evil 4 Remake's action has a kinetic brutality that feels like controlling chaos in the most satisfying way. It all feels punchy, visceral, and badass to pull off. Leon has, of course, been given more versatility to take on the more capable and deadly Ganados. Fundamentally, the absence of tank controls means he's much easier to control in the heat of battle. But now he has the ability to stealth and has more options when employing his trusty knife fighting skills. Knives now have durability, a carryover from Resident Evil 2 Remake, with each use slightly damaging it. Knives can now be used to parry nearly every attack by hitting a button just as enemies strike, as well as used to instantly break free when being grabbed. These new additions elevate the tango of violence when dealing with a crowd of enemies by creating a sense of momentum. Each fight can quickly become a dance of maneuvering weapons, managing resources, and executing parries. And being able to cycle back and forth between these actions in quick succession makes it feel like you're fighting as hard to survive as the Ganados are to kill you. Resident Evil 4 Remake is full of smart quality-of-life changes that build on what the original revolutionized, and the strongest example of this is the change in combat capabilities for Ashley Graham. Thankfully, Ashley no longer has a health bar for you to manage with your own resources. Instead, when Ashley is injured, she'll become incapacitated, forcing you to juke around enemies in order to get to her and bring her back to her feet. Now, the original game sort of trivialized this aspect of gameplay by giving you the ability to order Ashley to hide in garbage cans while you dealt with crowds of foes. This time, there are still places to hide Ashley, but they are far and fewer between. And that's a welcome change, as it makes protecting her feel much more ingrained into combat, while avoiding the feeling that she's just an object you have to keep safe. Ashley Graham, like Leon, is more fleshed out and believable. She retains that 20-year-old sensibility and reacts as such, screaming in horror and shock at the sight of a parasite erupting from a cultist's head. But it's never overstated. Resident Evil 4 Remake has struck a nice balance of allowing Leon and Ashley to communicate from time to time, without overstaying its welcome and falling into the talks too much protagonist trend that has become so prevalent in games in recent years.
Come on.
Okay.
I guess this is their idea of a warm welcome.
Across the board, characters are no longer the one-note plot devices they were in the original. Luis, for example, is given a little extra screen time that better establishes his stakes in the overarching plot. Even Krauser, the 80s action movie archetypal antagonist that seemed to walk right out of movies like Commando, feels more rounded thanks to further context around his stakes and presence in the narrative, albeit still a cheesy bad dude. Some characters, however, have been given more flavor than depth, specifically the Merchant. His iconic voice has changed, but this new version of the Merchant is iconic in his own right and stands as one of the most memorable characters in the franchise, despite only being a walking and talking pawn shop.
Don't get yourself killed now.
When you're not covering yourself with the stench of battle, as the Merchant likes to say, you'll have the opportunity to go off the beaten path and track down treasure, as well as complete requests that the Merchant has placed around the environment for you to find. Some are scavenger hunts, like finding a gold chicken egg, while others entail hunting down fiercer and unruly enemies that require a little backtracking to get to. In exchange for completing these requests, you'll receive Spinel gems that you can trade for treasure maps, special item upgrades, and more resources. The requests created more incentive to explore the world, and thankfully never interrupt the flow and pacing of the game, as they often lead you back down familiar paths with newly gained items like special keys to unlock cabinets and devices that hold treasure. Even as Leon's mission takes him to some lesser visually interesting areas in the latter chapters of the game, a carryover from the original Resident Evil 4, the remake still manages to retain a remarkable balance of action intensity and nail-biting combat scenarios. Where the original game started to lose its steam, the remake manages to keep the experience on track by considerably changing what I had come to know so well from the original. Some sections of the original game have been honed, trimmed down, and reorganized to better fit into the flow of the game and also within the environment they take place in. The first encounter with the blind, giant blade-wielding Gorado, for example, has been better contextualized to fit in the torturous depths of the castle. As a result, the scene is even scarier and more stressful than before. It all, in general, just feels turned up to 11. There are also returning boss fights that I have done a dozen times in the past. Some are slightly tweaked, while others have received a welcome, more significant overhaul. For nearly all of them, I had a smile plastered across my face. I applauded when I was caught off guard by new additions, and audibly cheered when I found some of Leon's most iconic lines were still in the game, alongside new ones. On the other hand, some sections of the game have been cut entirely, but it is evident that it has been done with careful consideration. For everything taken out of the game, something new has been introduced to take its place. Writing this review has involved putting the controller down and stepping away from playing Resident Evil 4 Remake, and as hyperbolic as it sounds, that is much easier said than done. Resident Evil 4 Remake is the re-envisioning I wanted, but also not the one I expected to get. I feared that messing with the magic of an all-time classic could spell disaster. Instead, Resident Evil 4 Remake deviates from the original in many significant ways, but never compromises anything that made it revolutionary. It preserves that, recontextualizes it, and rejuvenates it. This remake stands as a re-envisioning of its past rather than a replication of it. In doing this, it raises the bar for what a good remake is, and at the same time, preserves Resident Evil 4's legacy as a genre-defining experience and one of the greatest games of all time.